Hey everyone, Chris Burdick, Rain City, capital of Oregon.
And I'm Lesa with Rain City, capital of Washington.
And this is the playback of Real Talk, How to Flip Your First House.
Keep in mind that the Q&A is only in the live event.
So follow us on Facebook, check our upcoming events calendar.
Here you go, enjoy.
All right, guys. This is Real Talk. This is where we share stories of people that are crushing it in real estate. I'm Chris Burdick with Rain City, capital of Oregon, and
I'm Lesa with Rain City, capital of Washington.
Awesome. Yeah, so we are here. We're going to introduce our speakers here. Actually, Lesa, why don't you go first? I can cut you off.
You're great, and I just appreciate everybody coming. We're really excited because these people are going to talk about their stories, what it took to get started, and we just have tons of questions for them, and so I'm really excited. So I first want to say thank you so much for Rob and Ryan for coming on and sharing your stories, and it's really awesome to have you guys because everyone wants to know, how do you get started? What do we do? All those great questions. And I think Brian already had a great question that I look forward to asking you guys both at the end too. So I would like to introduce Ryan, Brian first. And this is pretty cool. I'm really excited for him to share his story. He's the owner of Green Antler Properties. He's had about 15 years of construction, but I think you said 10 in the oil industry, and started flipping, and this is his way to get out of it. So I'm really excited for him to talk a little bit more about himself and how he got started as well. So we'll share that. Rob? Chris?
Well,
Chris,
I'll go ahead and introduce Rob. So I worked with Rob since last year, and we did our first kind of deal together. He did his first flip in August, and totally crushed it. You know, we talked through, we analyzed it, we went over it together, and he talked about, do this or do that, and completely killed it. And he's in the midst of his second deal right now, and we were just talking before we got on, just he's looking for his next deal. And so super excited him kind of share with you guys, his process and his and kind of the things came up along the way in his first deal. Oh, and I should say, Robert lives in Vancouver with his wife and 2 kids, although he's moving up to Washington, further up north here shortly. So he'll be more in Seattle, Bellingham area.
And then Ryan lives in Clarkston, which is almost to Idaho border. So we have everybody all over the map, which is great. And he has his little one. Don't you have a daughter, right?
Daughter.
Yep, a daughter. How old is she?
She'll be 9 months in 3 days. So just a few months younger than Rob's youngest.
So besides killing in real estate, you're also family men that are figuring out how to do this with young kids.
Amen to that, man.
So what you're telling me, Ryan, is you're not getting any sleep right now.
Done.
And my back is finding new ways to hurt with how I have to sleep anymore.
Yep.
Oh, that's so cute. Absolutely.
It's a season, man. It's a season. Yeah.
And then when they get older, you're like, oh, I get to sleep, but then new things come up, right? Because we both have old kids. We have older kids. Chris and I have older kids.
Yeah. Oh, they have a whole different set of challenges, you guys. Yeah. You go from like keeping them alive to like not trying to kill them. Yeah,
That's awesome. All right, cool. Well, we're gonna definitely dive in more about you guys, and we're gonna ask more questions. That was just a little intro to get you guys started. Chris, do you want to start the first question? And Madeline, are we want to just go with how did you get started in real estate? And if Ryan, do you want to answer that question first? How did you get started?
Sure. So I got started off, my little brother and I, actually back when we first got in the oil field, were looking into real estate just because, you put that many hours in, you want your money to make you money in the end. So we started looking into rentals. So he actually dove in a lot earlier than I did. I ended up buying a house in Moscow, Idaho, which is about 40 miles north of us, and ended up getting taken over by my parents. But so it never really did much with it. But he actually went on to doing a bunch more and he bought a duplex that was right next to my first flip. And when the people, it actually was inherited because the previous owners had passed away and they were hoarders or whatsoever. So he had watched this place not have anything get done to it for a long time. So that was how my first one got started. But yeah, it got to start somewhere. That was a rough one.
Gotta start somewhere. That's the key word, though. You got to start, right? You got to start. And you've got 2 successful, and then you're working on your 3rd. So you got to just jump.
Robert, how about you?
Awesome. So I realized that I needed to get out of the 9-to-5 grind probably about a year into being out of college. I was working as a structural engineer, freshly married, and the grind of that 9-to-5, looking down this pipe of the next 50 years was not really, to me, what I felt like was going to be something where I got to live my life the way I wanted to live it. And I think, like many other people out there, you see the Chip and Joanne shows, all that. You think, oh, this is going to be easy, and I might as well just flip some houses. But I think really just the idea of being able to get out of my 9-to-5, create passive income, and live life the way I want to live it. Those are the things that really drew to my wife and I. She's an interior designer as well, and I was a structural engineer. So we're like, hey, maybe we could do something fun together in this, like create our own business and go after this thing. And so that was about 5 years ago, or maybe 4 years ago, of starting to think about it and really learn and educate ourselves on, everything there is out there on what it takes to flip your first house. And so we're just kind of getting started now. And like you said, Chris, just finished our first one, finishing up our second one, and trying to get things running here.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Okay. So let's jump in. So how did you guys find your first deal? Robert, why don't you go first?
Well, finding that first deal was probably it took the most resilience that I ever thought I would ever have to get a house under contract. I probably put offers on at least 25 houses, and did due diligence and recon on a lot more than that. And it was all preparation though for when the right one came, I think. And so I have to owe some credit to my good buddy Wes Garrison, who is a wheel and dealer sometimes, who struck up a relationship with a guy here in Vancouver. And when COVID hit, him and I were talking, and I asked him, hey, have you talked to that guy who said he wants to sell those houses? And said, no, I haven't. And so long story short, we started talking to this guy that Wes had created a relationship with. And I think it's just the long story short is it's all about connections. It's all about these last few years of creating those connections within the real estate market that allowed me to get into a place where when an opportunity showed itself or presented itself to me, we were able to pull the trigger on it. And so Wes wholesaled it to us. And so he was really the one that made it. Was really from a wholesaler then, essentially.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like you were taking a lot of shots and put a lot of things out there and getting told no a lot, but you kept going for it.
Yeah.
And didn't give up, and eventually you found that person that was willing to make a deal with you.
Yeah, like I said, just making the connections in the industry, in the market, and when the time came up where one presented itself that was a clear go, we were ready to make that first step into getting the house, just after having analyzed all these other deals prior, having the preparation behind us to do it, and also just having the contacts that we had built up to that point.
It's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you waited for the right one. You didn't just jump on it
Right.
to get started, right? That's awesome.
I think that was the hardest. I think that was the hardest part because there's so many we just wanted to jump on for the sake of jumping on it, for the sake of doing it. And I'm so thankful that we waited for the right one, that we didn't, get ourselves into something on our first one that was going to be, a money suck for us or not do as well, especially on that first one where you're trying to gain some momentum and all of that. So that first one, I think it's really important to not get too anxious about, and not pulling the trigger too quickly.
Oh, great. Solid advice. That's right. That's awesome. Ryan, you want to tell us about your first? How'd you find that deal?
A lot like what Robert was saying. It came down to a lot of dealing. Actually, what he was saying reminded me so much of between the first house and the second house, because that was when it all kind of really started taking off. But that first one, it was just kind of, we actually had a agreement in the Denver airport, if I remember correctly, when I was on my way to work. She finally agreed, and it was, I get rid of everything their family left behind and $75,000, and she gives me her extra chopping block countertops. That was how that one worked out. But it was, it was terrifying for a good portion of it, just because, like you said, you don't want to take on too much. And the first one was definitely the worst house on the block, but I saw the potential and I was super excited about it. And I looked at a lot more, but this one, you picture it, and there was only one part about that house that I didn't finish the way I originally pictured from that first day. So that was how my first one got started. But
what I love to hear from you two too is you had hesitation. There was a little bit of fear, but then you just did it. And I feel like when Chris and I talk to a lot of first-time investors, their number one thing is, how do I get started? And it's a lot of times educate yourself, doing all those things that you need to do. And Rob, you talked about learning and figuring stuff out, but taking that first step is honestly what needs to happen. And it's okay to be careful.
They said educate, and then still be prepared to fail. Don't get hung up on the little things. Like, if I could say anything, it's don't get hung up on something not going right or whatever, because you gotta push through. And whether it's finding a new contractor, I don't know how Robert's was, if he used subs or anything like that, but there was a lot of bad contractors to find the good contractors. And once you find the good ones, you grab them, you hold them tight, and you don't let them go.
That is actually a question someone had that I was going to wait till Q&A, but since you brought it up, Chris, I know it's off the question, but they said, do you have contractors? Do you do your own work? And then if so, how did you find good contractors? Rob, do you want to go and talk about yours? And then Ryan, do you want to answer that as well? Since that's a hot question. People are already asking it.
I feel like I kind of struck gold with some of the contractors that I had as contacts, because it really was just through, like I said, some of the connections that I had made previously to even doing that first flip. And the electricians, the plumbers, the handymen, the drywall guy, like everyone that I brought in was a first time working with them, and they all did me really good. I worked in construction before being a structural engineer, and so I know the landscape a little bit, and I was a little nervous about it, but some of these guys had done work for friends of mine who had done flips, and so that's where a lot of my contacts came from. The house that I bought, there was a house being flipped right next to me, and I struck up a relationship with the investor there, and so he shared with me some of his guys. I can't really give any rhyme or reason. I actually, when looking for a handyman, like general labor guy, I actually went on to Nextdoor, that app that links you to people, and I said, hey, I put an ad out, and a guy came who ended up being like kind of my right-hand man through the whole flip, and was just solid gold. Was like, got to pay him like a fair amount. He worked his butt off, and he was so thankful for the work. I was so thankful for the work. It was awesome. Was able to give him a bonus at the end for just how much he busted his ass off for it. So it was, you know, I know it doesn't help some of the investors who are looking for contacts on how I found them, because it really was just like the people that got laid out in front of me were all just so amazing and did such a good job that I can't really take any credit for how I found them, other than the connections that I had with other people who had done flips. So those are my contractors.
What Robert's saying too, a key thing that I picked up on that, and I use, is like, you pay well, you bonus out the people who deserve it, and it's really, really, really easy to sell quality. So if you find a quality contractor, you take good care of them. Kind of like his handyman is like my siding guy, and ended up being a friend that I ran into from a long time before, but he ended up helping me with the foundation. He helped me with windows. It just helped me out a lot. I only had one really, really bad contractor, and I blame myself for that one, just because I took one of the lower bids, and that was my landscaper, and he was awful. And I ended up doing all the landscaping myself, but he built a retaining wall that was pretty cheap, but yeah, didn't finish the landscaping, and that just ended up being a nightmare. You don't want to end up babysitting people. So like when I say it comes to contractors, just call them out, get your bids. Usually, I don't know how Robert feels about it, but you can usually get a gut instinct just by how they talk. For the most time, there's a lot of guys that kind of dance around how they're going to do something, and then you have the guys that come in and be like, okay, this is how we're going to do this, and they know. Case in point, like my septic system, we just put it in this auction property. One bid was for $19,000. It was very wishy-washy. The other bid was for $14,000, and the guy I went with was actually $7,500. So there are like huge differences that you deal with here. So yeah, the biggest thing I can say is listen to how they talk, listen to how they approach the situation, and then if they do work out good, just take care of them and spread their business too. Anytime you run into somebody else, because your work sells itself as well. So you keep giving them work, and they'll put you to the top of the list, especially right now where people are having a hard time finding contractors.
That's solid. That's great advice. Well, perfect. Well, I think we should dive into the slideshow, because I know people would love to say, all right, let's see what their work. What did they do? Let's talk about it. Madeline, will you put up, I think Ryan's deals first. We're going to each,
or Robert.
Oh, Robert. Yep. Sorry, my bad. Okay.
That's all right. No worries. No worries. Yeah. So Robert's deal. Yeah, I helped him with the financing this one. This is a house over in Vancouver, Washington, in Southwest Washington. This is and the area is kind of cool. It's right near some new development that's going on the waterfront there. It was like, maybe 8 blocks from there, and so just an older house, and had a little deferred maintenance. He picked it up for $225. The reno, just see here, was 41 grand, and we had pegged the ARV, the after renovation value, after it's all fixed up, at 345. And you can see on here on the slides, kind of a big cosmetic redo. So you're doing, new roof, new gutters, doing some landscaping in there, put some new insulation in, kind of all new kitchen. So cabinets, countertops, appliances, same thing with the bathroom, and refinish the flooring. So, just a nice, I always call this kind of the classic first time flipper do it. It's a big cosmetic redo. Maybe if there's room, you could throw in like add a bedroom or a bathroom, but this case it was exactly like that. And what was cool is that the market was accelerating at the time, and when he went to put it on, his realtor was like, "Hey, put it on for like 400," and then actually went over asking, and they sold for 420 6 months later. So Rob crushed it on his first deal, and just knocked it out of the park, and made a ton of money on that one. I was You know, and I should always say with this stuff too, like, don't expect that every time, you know, it may not happen that same way. You know, but yeah,
Right.
just a great first experience. Is there
Yeah,
another
and that's kind
here?
of what I was.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say that's kind of what I was saying, like on holding off on some of those other deals that seemed like, you know, the margins were much smaller, you know, all of that. And, you know, thankful to have done a first flip that was able to get me the profit margins that it did. So that way, you know, I'm not, you know, not wanting to do this again anytime soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at that kitchen. That's good.
I know. Look at that. See, I mean, like, if you look at the, yeah, I mean, like, you had to rip up the whole thing in there, and then you put it all brand new. But I mean, look at the finished product; it's amazing. So Rob, what was one kind of unexpected challenge you faced during this flip, and tell us kind of how you overcome it? Like, this is always the big fear of new investors, right? They're gonna open a wall and out come all these bees or something, and you're like, oh my god, you know. So,
Right. Well, I don't think there were too many surprises as far as the like what needed to be done. Like I had gone in there, I'd walked through the house multiple times. There wasn't like anything rotting out or anything like that that I hadn't really foreseen. I think the biggest surprise, maybe there are two learning experiences, I guess I could call them. And one of them is the renovation estimate. You know, Chris, like I had come to you and pegged it at 41.5. Ended up being a little bit more than that. I think I came in at like 52 or 51. So, you know, there's that was more the surprise that came into it, is just like, hey, you know, for my first one, trying to figure out how much this whole thing's gonna cost, trying to be somewhat conservative, but not too conservative, you know, and so that I think was the biggest and best learning experience that I took away from this, is just like being able to kind of sharpen my pencil and get, you know, into the figuring out what these costs are actually going to be. Not having done it, it was kind of just like, well, I think this is how much it's going to cost. I don't actually really know, but I'm taking my best shot at it here. And then the other learning experience, I think, is when we're talking about contractors, is that just learning to deal with, I pretty much GC'd this out. So I did a lot of the work myself, but I subbed probably 50% of it out. And just learning to work with them on their schedules. They're busy as well. And, you know, obviously on a flip, you want this being done. You wanted everything done yesterday. But understanding that, you know, your contractors, they've got a lot of other stuff going on too. And so learning to work with their schedules and schedule all that out, and really just coordinating which items should be done first. Like, you know, I don't want to refinish my floors before I paint the walls, those types of things. Those are my biggest two learning experiences though on this flip.
that's cool. That's cool. I'm going to ask one more question, and then we'll jump into Ryan's flip. So the loan processing experience. I mean, like Lesa and I, we go over this with our borrowers, but it can still be kind of like daunting and scary for somebody who's never done it before. With a hard money lender, and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't expect. Like, what was your experience on the lending side? And like, this is not like a Rain City plug. This is more like we just want to know, like, you know, what was your experience?
Well, happy to give you guys the plug, because as those of you that are listening, that this is your first time or you're looking to flip for your first time, I know the feeling of, my goodness, when I went to the title company and signed on that dotted line, my hand was shaky. You know, I was scared spitless. Even though I'd done the numbers, even though everything looked good, I was still terrified to make this jump. And one thing I will say is that once you make the jump, you tear down some barriers that have been preventing you to move forward with flipping. So make that jump when you're ready to. But working with Rain City Capital, my goodness, I was always a little nervous about hard money lending. You know, you think to yourself, is the mafia gonna come after me if something goes wrong, you know, all this stuff. And Rain City Capital is super professional. and they really made the process, they work with you. Like Chris, you really worked with me in analyzing this, of making sure, like giving me suggestions and pointers and like helping me through just the analysis process even. And the one thing that I really liked about with Rain City was that it gave me reassurance that if they see this and they're like, yeah, this is a deal, they're probably even, they might even be a little more conservative than I am. And so if they're saying it's a deal, I'm like, okay, it gives me a reassurance that these guys out here who are professionals are like confident in this house. Otherwise they wouldn't be giving me the money. As a first time flipper, that was huge for me. And then just being able to close like really, really fast. I don't think we're on any crazy time constraints on this one, Chris, but just being able to get that whole process done in, about a week or so, I think it was really awesome, really great to be able to just have that all available so quickly, especially for the guy who was selling the house to me too. He being able to close fast with cash. That was a huge plus for him too.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because I mean, I really, I think Lisa and I both, we were trying to talk through with our borrowers, like, we go over together with them, like, is this a good deal? And like, like Rob was saying, like, we'll go through it and I'll tell you if it's a good deal. If it's a terrible deal, I'll be like, man, this is a terrible deal. Don't do this deal.
Yeah.
They'll do that before.
Well, I think there's some that we had gone through previously where you had told me, Rob, let's wait for another one. I don't think this is your deal right here. So
yeah,
that's appreciated just as much.
Look,
yep.
Yeah. All right. Let Lesa, do you want to talk about Ryan's deal and you guys start on that one?
It's weird because normally I have the clicker where I can move it, but Madeline's our gal and she's clicking it over. So I have to let someone else have the control. So Ryan, do you want to talk a little bit about your deal? This also is another slam dunk. I mean, you guys, for your first deals, these numbers are really awesome. So I always love, it was your deal. Do you want to talk a little bit about it, Ryan?
Yeah,
and how you got it? How you got it?
This one's actually my second one, but I got this one, my realtor from selling the first one, he found this one, and this was another one that was in a trust, and we found it about a month before they were planning on putting it on the market, dealing with their families and everybody going through it. And the second that they put it on the MLS, we made a full price offer on it. We actually had to rewrite our offer because we did it too early, by like a day. But yeah, this one was a good one. It was the person who had lived in it before, they had it as a rental, and the people that lived there were cooking in it or whatsoever. So they ended up having to go in and they had to gut everything. So they did most of my demo work for me, which was nice. But this one, I took all the profits from the first house and I put it straight to this house. And I, like he was saying, that's been really nice with this house that I'm on now is working with Rain City has been absolutely great, where I wish that I had met you guys and was working with you on this, because I would say that was one thing that actually kind of kept me strapped, because I did try to finance everything myself. So for the first 3 months of renovating this house, we were still waiting for the first house to close. So like I borrowed $60,000 from my 401k to pay cash for the house, and $20,000 for my father-in-law at 10% interest, and yada, yada, yada. But it was just to keep everything rolling. But this one, I got a lot of hiccups out of the way on the first one that would have normally held me up. But this was a fun one. I really like this house. I worked with a lot more contractors on this house. I met my HVAC people. We did a whole new HVAC system, learned better ways to set up HVAC. So if you do start out like putting your air return up high instead of down low, just little things in a house. So if you're going through and you're customizing, having fun with it. Built my first barn doors. That was fun. And
so you've done a lot of work yourself though. but you also contract
Yeah.
out. So do you want to talk a little bit about that as well?
So-
Like, how much do you do?
I hired plumbers. I hired this was a full new electrical. So everything in this house was redone electrically. A whole new HVAC system, ductwork, all that, and the carpet, everything else I did. I work with a lender in town that did my granite countertops. The cabinets I ordered through Lillian. I don't know if anybody's ever worked with Lillian, but they're great for RTA cabinets. An excellent way to save money, and really good quality cabinets if you're willing to put them together yourself.
Perfect. And then you, just if you don't mind sharing a little bit more, I know this was your second, but you had the opportunity to buy two, and now you have actually three. You've two completed and your third one. What do you think was the most unexpected or the worst experience that you encountered on either of the three, even the one that you've working on right now? Any hiccups that you want to share that might help another person?
A lot of it is just putting too much on me. Whereas I wish I would hire out a lot more for certain things. I'd put too much on me, and then I would hire somebody and they wouldn't work out, and then it would be a disaster there. And whereas if I would have had somebody like my painters, I ended up helping out. I had a painter help me who owed me and help, because you always have people that want to jump in when you're on your first flip or second flip. All your friends are like, "Oh, I'd love to come help you on your flip." And then when it gets down to it, and they're like,
Nope. Nope. What about, we always talk about what was a surprise, but was something positive? Can you think of that you're like, this went really well?
So this house opened up a lot of doors. So the young lady and her friend who actually bought this house, their parents are selling their house, which might be my next house that I'm doing. They saw it, and like my friends, I've helped them showcase a lot of their pieces. So they started a metal fab business. So they essentially, the HVAC guy, this was his first house. He started off on his own on this house. And my friend who does the siding, they branched out and they started up their fabrication business on this house through the funding. So we've kind of have all started up and came up together, and it's been a lot of branching out and helping each other grow. So it's been really cool. That's probably my favorite thing about this whole project, is showcasing so many people's stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. And then your third purchase, I'm just dabbling on this one because you bought it at auction, and that's a hot topic right now for a lot of people. How did that differ than, buying it from the MLS, like one of your properties, or knowing somebody and having that connection? How did that differ?
So it only really differs in the way that you can't see it. You can't get in it. You don't know what you're getting into. Like where this house, even though it was a meth house before, I had walked through it multiple times. I could inspect everything. I knew what the work that was going to need to be done. But buying something sight unseen or just looking through the windows is pretty terrifying, especially when it has a basement and everything else. I'd say this auction property's worked out really well. It's already sold. It sold almost before we closed on it. That was pretty. I mean, the escrow closing, dealing with the auction property. I don't know if all auctions are like that, but as Lesa could say, that was a battle beyond battles too.
It's a teamwork.
Teamwork made the dream work on that one for sure.
Yep, definitely, on 100%. Well, perfect, awesome. So let's go with some questions that we have. Chris, do you want to?
So the first thing I have there is, what's something that new investors should know about flipping their first house? You guys would say would be the top thing.
I think I kind of already hit on it, but one of the things that was huge for me was just getting past the barrier of just doing your first one. And there's a lot of fear going into that. You got a family, you got, people that you're responsible over and all that, or at least I do. And so there's a lot of fear there. But I think that when you cross that line, it kind of puts you in a place where there's no turning back. You're like, okay, I got to do this. I crossed this line. I'm now about to do this. And for me, that put me in actually a really good place, because it's like, I can't back out of this now. I just purchased this place. The only way to go is to move. Yeah, you're committed. It's time to move forward now. And now that I've crossed that line, we were able to buy our second one with you guys without really even having to think about it. It's like, oh man, the numbers work. It's all good. Okay, let's buy it. And that barrier was no longer there, which I feel like is starting to create momentum for us, where we can like go in with more confidence and see the momentum start to build. But it all, obviously, you gotta put both feet in the water at some point in time, and it's just being able to pull the trigger when the time comes up.
Good one.
Good.
What about you, Ryan? What do you think?
I saw a comment. Can I answer a comment?
Oh yeah, go for it.
So Kim asked me, she said, what do you think was the monetary value of the labor that you put into the house? Would you still have been profitable had you subbed out those parts?
Yep.
So I will say yes. In a lot of aspects, I would have saved more money by subbing out some work. And I'll tell you why. I worked 2 weeks on, 1 week off. For the first year I did that flip, I worked on my 6 days off. And there were some times where I was so burnt out, I took sometimes that whole week off. So at that time, I did a cash out refinance in that house. So it was almost $900 a month to where if I wasn't working on it, nothing was happening there, because I was trying to do it all by myself. So yeah, there was lots of times when I drywalled the kitchen, I remember my wife made me hire out drywallers, and drywallers is my specialty. She said, you need to go hunting, hire out some drywallers. So I hired out some drywallers, but and the value, I'd say, of the labor that I put into it is probably, I think on the first one, when I crunched it, I may have averaged $30 an hour on a good day, but that I had fun doing it too. Like, I wasn't killing myself, and I wanted to make it perfect. It was attention to detail for a lot of things, especially on this teeny tiny bathroom that I was doing. But yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, hire out. Dude, time is money too, right? So it's you got to think of that. Time is money. So go ahead.
I was going to say the overall profit over the time. The good thing about it is everything you put into it, you're getting back. So at the end of that first house, when everything all paid off, that was just a lump sum of cash that I could reinvest. It wasn't getting spent or put away on other things. Especially when I was financing out of pocket, and we still cleared probably close to $70,000 to $80,000 on that house. So it was a good first flip for a second job.
Right. Absolutely. That's a good first flip. That's a good flip.
Right. Yeah.
Where do you guys both see your business growing in the next year? Whoever wants to answer it.
One of the things I've noticed is I've mentioned a couple times is momentum, where you do one, and then we did it. We're just about done with our second, and the more experience that we're gaining and putting underneath our belt, the more I'm seeing people asking me if I want to either partner on deals with them, or they have a house, like just the connections, bringing a house to you that maybe they know someone who wants to sell. The more people are thinking about you as someone who's a real estate investor. And so when they see something, they bring it to you, like, oh, I've got a house here that you might be interested in. So I've been seeing that happen a lot more, even just after the first one. Now after the second one's done, or just about done, it's gaining more and more. So my wife and I have a goal of 3 houses this year. We like I said, just about done with one, looking for our second, and we're putting a lot of money right now into marketing as well, to help get us there to see those 3 done this year.
Awesome. That's great. Ryan?
About the same Mine is Robert. Once again, we're goal right now is either 3 flips, 2 flips and a rental, or 1 flip and 2 rentals. Right now, we're starting to see where my area is a lot smaller. It gets a little bit harder to find certain properties, and I've found with the last 2, if I'm patient enough, the right ones will come to me. So I take on a lot of big remodel jobs or something like that. That's another reason why I got licensed and bonded, to be able to go do a bathroom or have another showcase piece. And I mean, it would be great to do a Chip and Joanne kind of a deal where somebody's like, we bought this house and we want you to renovate it, kind of a deal. But I mean, that would save a lot of money on the closing costs, but
Yes, it would.
but I kind of keep everything open. I mean, it's a big piece of advice that I give to people is be able to roll with the punches. Like Robert said, the right house, you got to wait for it. You can't just jump on any property, because I've looked at a lot, and you're going to walk into them, and your real estate agent, if you got an agent or somebody, they're going to try to push every single last one of them on you. You're like, okay, well, there's juice ain't worth the squeeze on this one. You know, like you got to, I mean, you got to risk it to get the biscuit, but you also.
I like that one.
There's got to be.
I remember that one.
I haven't either. I like it. I'm going to use it.
And I want to give a huge thanks to Rob and Ryan for coming on. Really appreciate you guys.
Just a friendly reminder, Rain City Capital loans are only for non-owner occupied, and all terms apply.
And please reach out to Lesa or I if you have any questions about the event, the content, or any flips you have coming up.
Thanks so much for watching.